talk about Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. As I record this video, the Bears are currently 2-2 to start the 2025 season. And you can make the case right now that they should be 3-1 considering how that game ended in week 1 against the Minnesota Vikings. But in today's video, we're going to talk about why they've made major improvements in just 4 games this season compared to all the games last year. Now, when you go back to last season, it was a season from hell with Matt Eberflus being the head coach. The entire coaching staff around Caleb Williams was not good enough. It was basically an organization that had a lot of dysfunction with this young quarterback in his first year. Now, the national media came out and they crowned Caleb Williams right before he took a snap in the NFL to be the next great quarterback in this league. It doesn't work that way. It takes years to become that player. We've seen this with Peyton Manning, the same with Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, whomever you want to name that has been an all-time great in the past. But when you take a deeper look at this coaching staff and the situation last year, Caleb Williams statistically had a solid year. 26 passing touchdowns to 8 interceptions. Shane Waldron was your offensive coordinator to begin the season last year. They fired him after just a couple of games. Now Thomas Brown, who went from being a positions coach, is now your interim offensive coordinator. But when you fired Matt Eberflus after that tough Detroit Lions loss on Thanksgiving Day, he's now your interim head coach. That had nothing to do with Caleb Williams. He went from listening to Matt Eberflus all off season long, be his head coach, Shane Waldron be his offensive coordinator. And within just a few months, now your offensive coach and your head coach is your former positions coach in Thomas Brown. That is crazy to go through as a rookie. And I'm not just trying to make 100% excuses for Caleb Williams and his shortcomings last year. Sure, he had some bad moments. He held on to the football for a very long time. He missed a lot of passes. He would rush himself into sacks. And he did have a very good wide receiving core with Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, and DJ Moore. But there was no offensive structure. And this was one of the worst offensive line units in football. A lot of haters will come out and they'll say, well, Caleb Williams, he's creating most of the pressure on himself. That was not true. The offensive line is the reason why he took majority of the sacks last year. He was the most sacked quarterback in the league, and you cannot go out there and you cannot run the football effectively enough. So that cancels out play action. It was a lot going on with the Bears last year. And now we fast forward to this offseason. You bring in Ben Johnson, this phenomenal offensive coordinator from the Detroit Lions, a team in this division. He wanted to work with Caleb Williams and this crew. And you bring in some brand new offensive linemen, Drew Dahlman at the center position from the Atlanta Falcons via free agency. You make a trade to bring in an all-pro guard in Joe Thuney. You bring in Jonah Jackson, a veteran guard that has connections with Ben Johnson going back to the Detroit Lions to help out your tackle play, because the tackle play was very inconsistent last year. And from the first game, from the first half, you can see Caleb Williams, he was comfortable in this system with Ben Johnson. At USC, he wasn't asked to play under center. They now ask him to get under center, turn your back towards the defense. That's a lot to ask of a quarterback that was beat up last year. Most pressured and most sacked quarterback last year in the NFL, to turn his back away from the defensive line and to work on play action. But Caleb Williams has done that so far. He started out red hot against the Minnesota Vikings. He was 10 for 10. And for the rest of the game, he was 10 of 24, 105 passing yards. I understand that. But he is not the sole reason why they lost that matchup against the Minnesota Vikings in week 1. The defense also let them down. When you're up 17-6, you have to find a way to finish out that game, not just offensively, but the same on the defensive end. And Ben Johnson was being very aggressive against the Minnesota Vikings in week 1. Instead of taking his points, he's going for it on 4th down when he could have easily just taken a 40-yard field goal. But it's a learning process for a first-year head coach and a second-year quarterback and Caleb Williams. It was a point in time late in the 4th quarter. The Minnesota Vikings had 126 total yards, and the Bears had -1 yards in general. That is not going to work. Now, in the past, when the Bears have lost games like this would derail their entire season. We just saw this last year when they lost in that Hail Mary play against the Washington Commanders, another game that Caleb Williams placed them in to potentially win that matchup. The entire season went the other way around. They could not bounce back from that adversity against the Washington Commanders. And then the next week against the Detroit Lions, it was a terrible loss. You got blown out on the road. But Caleb Williams did not look terrible in this matchup. He wasn't the reason why the Detroit Lions had 52 points on the board. It was their defense. He was 19 of 30, 207 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and 1 interception. The 1 interception that he did throw in that matchup, he's trying to throw the football away. It's a young quarterback mistake. You can dock him for it, and I'll respect you for it. But at the same time, I'm not going to come on here and blame Caleb Williams 100% and say just throw the football out of bounds. That could have went for an intentional grounding play. So he goes out to the right. He throws the football away. He was thinking, and it goes for an interception. You would have lost that matchup anyway because your defense was not good enough. And they beat you up severely in the second half. But these are growing pains for a young team. This is still one of the youngest teams in the NFL offensively and the same defensively. So you come back the next week against the Dallas Cowboys. Your offensive line does look better. And Caleb Williams has one of the best games in his career. Now, granted, it is the Dallas Cowboys, one of the worst defenses in the NFL. But I just saw the Dallas Cowboys go out there and score 40 points in a tie against the Green Bay Packers a few days ago. You won this matchup 31-14. Caleb Williams, 19-28, 300 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns. He was able to go out there and look like USC Caleb Williams. But the biggest thing here in that matchup against the Dallas Cowboys, you were able to run the football and work off of play action. You weren't able to do that in week 1 against the Minnesota Vikings effectively enough. You weren't able to do that against the Detroit Lions early on. And I'm talking about early in the game here. You're not going to run yourself back into the game if you're down by 2 or 3 possessions and it's early in the fourth quarter. Obviously, you want to go out there and throw your way back into the matchup to try to win that game. You run the football, you're running time off the clock, even if you run hurry up offense. So you're going to pass your way back in, even if it's just a bunch of screens to potentially go out of bounds and stop the clock. But against the Cowboys, you saw Caleb Williams get the football out quicker, take more deep shots down the field to Rome Odunze, to DJ Moore, get the tight ends involved. Caleb is progressing at a nice rate right now for a young quarterback. I don't have this conception of him being this generational talent. The way that I look at generational talent, it happens in the NFL. It doesn't happen at the college level. You can be amazing at the college level. That gets you into the NFL. But as soon as week 1 hits of the regular season, everything that you did in college goes to the wayside. You're no longer in Clemson. You're no longer in LSU, USC. You're now part of this NFL organization. What can you do for this team moving forward? Look at Trevor Lawrence with Jacksonville. Was tremendous at Clemson. I'll say that he hasn't been a generational talent, but he hasn't been this bad quarterback either. And Caleb Williams last year was not a generational talent, quote unquote, for the Chicago Bears. That's okay. He was still a good quarterback. You just want to see progression. And he is playing better than most young quarterbacks in today's game. And this is still a heavily flawed offensive system with Ben Johnson, which we're going to get into. And against the Las Vegas Raiders, this was a tough game for Caleb because he was dealing with pressure pretty much the entire game from Max Crosby, from Malcolm Koonce, and the same with Tyree Wilson. And he was still 22-37, 212 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, 1 interception to Max Crosby. But he only took 1 sack because he's getting the football out quicker, and he's just going out there and he's throwing the football away. Last year, he'll just eat the sack. But you throw the football away, instead of just going out there and being a 2nd and 15 and being a 2nd and 18, you're back in 2nd and 10 if you just throw the football away without intentional grounding. So he's learning from that. And he's hitting those big passes deep down the field. Did he miss a lot of passes late in week 1 in the fourth quarter against the Minnesota Vikings? Yes, he did. But that was a team loss that wasn't on Caleb Williams. Now, when we talk about the flaws here with the Chicago Bears and the reason why they've had some bad moments this season, even though they've had some good moments with Ben Johnson, he's trying to treat this team like it's the Detroit Lions in that system with Jared Goff. 2 different quarterbacks here. Jared Goff is surgical. He's one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL. That is not Caleb Williams' game just yet. He still misses a lot of passes in the open field. He is still not comfortable inside this pocket, and I don't blame him. Even though they brought in these new names, some of these names haven't stepped up just yet. Jonah Jackson has not been a good guard at the right guard position. He got dominated in week 1 against the Minnesota Vikings. In week 2 against the Detroit Lions, he got dominated yet again. Now, against the Dallas Cowboys, one of the worst pass rushes in the league, he had a very good game. Everyone did. They can't get pass rush unless they blitz the quarterback. And also in week 4 against the Las Vegas Raiders, he gave up a lot of pressures. He needs to be better as a pass blocker and the same as a run blocker. He's a veteran. And they brought him in to come in and settle things down on the right side. But you look at Caleb Williams, he's stepping more towards Joe Thuney in the center. Drew Dalman has been solid. Joe Thuney has been very good. But these offensive linemen, they have to be better in front of Caleb. They're getting the football out quicker to Rome Odunze, to Cole Kmet, to Colston Loveland. It's been rare to get the football to Colston Loveland, who they spent a first-round pick on, by the way. I want to see more of him, even though he's dealing with an injury right now. And lucky for them, they're on a bye week, so hopefully when they come off this bye week, he'll be able to play. But you draft him in the first round for a reason. He could be that Sam Laporta type. But you can't treat this Bears team like it's the Lions team. They don't have the continuity on the offensive line just yet. It took years for the Lions to get to this point in the NFL. And it took years for Jared Goff to get to that level. He was a very good quarterback with the Rams. They moved off him. He comes to Detroit. And those first couple of years there with Dan Campbell, they weren't pretty. But I look at it from the standpoint, if the offensive line can be more consistent, like how Joe Thuney and Drew Dalman has been, you'll be better off. Now, the left tackle position, they benched Braxton Jones in that matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders. That was the right move. This is a kid who's in a contract year. Ben Johnson, he didn't draft him. And I don't think that Braxton Jones is going to be on this team for too much longer. They may trade him at the trade deadline, but you start Theo at the left tackle position. Theo looks solid. Not saying that he's going to be one of the best tackles in the league long term, but he looks solid. Braxton Jones went down with an injury a few years ago, has been the same player since that injury. But let's not act like pre-injury. Braxton Jones was one of the best players at his position. So you can move on from Braxton Jones. Go with Theo at the left tackle position. The offensive line looked better. And then you have Ozzie at the right tackle position. Darnell Wright, right now, he's dealing with an injury. Hopefully he can come back and he can play some very good snaps with the Chicago Bears. He's been up and down in his career. He hasn't been this franchise tackle that they've been looking for, but he's not a complete bust either. But Ozzie came in against Max Crosby, and he looked better against Max than Darnell Wright did, and he helped slow down Max Crosby. Now, late in the game, Max Crosby did give Caleb Williams more problems. It happened in the first quarter, and it happened late in the fourth quarter, but he's one of the best pass rushers in the league. I'm not going to come on here and dock a young player or even someone like Darnell Wright and say, man, you have to be better against him on every single snap. That's unrealistic. You're going to get beat against defensive ends like that, whether it's Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, or TJ Watt. But can you go out there and slow them down? And I feel like, in my opinion, Ozzie did that, and it gave Caleb Williams more time. But the Bears, another flaw that they have outside this offensive line being consistent, they still can't run the football. If you take away Caleb Williams and his rushing yards, this team is ranked 29th in rushing offense. And you have a talented running back in DeAndre Swift. It comes down to the offensive line. And we know that Ben Johnson can call up some very good rushing plays. We've seen him do this with Dave Montgomery and with Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, DeAndre Swift, he is not as talented as Jahmyr Gibbs in open space in terms of making 2 to 3 defenders miss and take it to the house for 40 to 50 yards. That's not his game. But we've seen him play with a top offensive line with the Philadelphia Eagles, and he looks solid. DeAndre Swift may not be that game-changing back, but the reason why they're having struggles right now running the football is not on DeAndre Swift. It's on this offensive line unit. They have to be better. And no one is buying into play action right now with the Chicago Bears because you haven't been consistent with running the football. And the play action game is a huge focal point of the offense with Ben Johnson from what we've seen with Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions. So now he's going out there, he's running a bunch of quick game and more screens. They can stretch the field out. It was a beautiful flea flicker play against the Dallas Cowboys, but you're not going to face the Dallas Cowboys defense every single week. So even though I feel like Caleb Williams is progressing very nicely in the system with Ben Johnson, and Ben Johnson has been better in terms of managing the game and managing the clock, they need this offensive line to step up. Far as the weapons on the outside, DJ Moore is still a tremendous player. Rome Odunze has more numbers than him right now. He's been more productive. That doesn't mean that he's a better player than DJ Moore just yet. And let's not forget, Rome Odunze is a first-round pick in the past for a reason. This man was a talented player coming out of Washington. He has that ability to be the best wide receiver on this team, and the same with Luther Burden. So I think right now you keep DJ Moore, you keep Luther Burden, and you keep Rome Odunze. There's a lot of upside there with all three of those players, but DJ Moore is still immensely talented. They just had to do a better job just in terms of going out there and getting him the football on a consistent basis, and he has solid numbers this season. But the man that has the second most receiving touchdowns up to this point, that's Rome Odunze. I mentioned the tight ends before. Get Colston Loveland involved more, and the same with Cole Kmet, and I think that they will. It's 13 games left in the regular season. It's not all set in stone right now, but you have a lot of good playmakers around Caleb. But in order to get this offense going into the next gear, they need this offensive line to perform better. And I'm looking at certain veterans like Jonah Jackson at the guard position. And if they move on from Braxton Jones, hey, it'll be a good deal for him. You go to another team, maybe they'll give you the contract extension that you want, and the Bears could possibly get something for him in return. And the Bears are one of those teams, they can't run the football and they can't stop the run. Because as I record this video, they're ranked 32nd in rushing defense. That's dead last. And I understand they're dealing with a lot of injuries against the Las Vegas Raiders. That's a nasty, ugly win. Put it in your pocket because any win in this league, it's a win. But it's not ideal. To win that matchup and to give up those many rushing yards against one of the worst rushing teams in the NFL entering week 4, that's not ideal. You still have players up front that can go out there and help you out. Now look at Dennis Allen. For 3 quarters against the Minnesota Vikings, you did a tremendous job. But in the 4th quarter, your defense let you down. You're the defensive play caller here. Against the Detroit Lions, they had 52 points on this defense. That's not good enough. You did a very good job against Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. And you did come away with 3 interceptions against Geno Smith and the Las Vegas Raiders, but that man had 3 interceptions just a couple weeks before against the Los Angeles Chargers. That's more so about the players than the scheme. I'm not the biggest fan of the scheme right now with Dennis Allen. The one thing that Matt Eberflus did get right was the defense. As a head coach, if he was the defensive coordinator with this organization, you would have had no complaints out of me. Just as a head coach, he was terrible. But they need Dennis Allen to be better. They need Montez Sweat to do a better job as well in terms of coming off the edge and sacking the quarterback. You did bring in Deo from the Indianapolis Colts. He has a sack. I expect for both of those guys to go out there and to be better. Grady Jarrett right now is dealing with an injury, but if he's fully healthy, he's a very good run-stopping defensive tackle. You have Gervin Dexter Sr., talented players up front. Tremaine Edmonds has been phenomenal so far this season. TJ Edwards, he's dealing with an injury. Hopefully off this bye week, he can get fully healthy and he'll be better moving forward. That's a very good linebacking duo in the middle of your defense. On the back end of your defense, Jalen Johnson, he's on IR right now. He wasn't able to play in week 1 against the Minnesota Vikings because he's dealing with a leg injury. But statistically, he's been the best cornerback with the Bears for years now. That's why they gave him a contract extension 2 years ago. Jalen Johnson is a phenomenal cornerback on the back end of this defense when he's fully healthy. But Tyreek Stevenson, the man that gave up that Hail Mary play last year against the Washington Commanders, he's been their best player in the secondary up to this point in terms of just going out there and making crucial tackles and making plays on the football. And I know that Kevin Byard had a phenomenal game against the Las Vegas Raiders. Don't sleep on him. The reason why I bring up these players is because they're very good. They may not be elite names in this league, but these are good, talented football players on the defensive end, and they can play some very good defense. It comes down to Dennis Allen. And the whole reason why I made this video, for anyone that is still blaming Caleb Williams and saying that he's not progressing, they're wrong. And I've said this before about Caleb Williams. I don't care that he paints his nails. I don't care what he does off the field, as long as he's not harming himself or anyone else. If that's his way that he expresses himself, be at it. He does have a long ways to go in his career, but the Bears are still a major work in progress right now with Ben Johnson. But being 2-2 right now is not terrible, but you could be 3-1. You learn from those mistakes in the past. You learn from that 4th quarter against the Minnesota Vikings. You learn from that game against the Detroit Lions that you got punched in the mouth on. And you build on games like how you had against the Dallas Cowboys, and you build on that gutsy win that you had over the Las Vegas Raiders, and it came down to a blocked field goal. Shout out to the special teams unit. If you can just get all these units connecting together and an offensive line can be better and they can give Caleb Williams a consistent run game, you'll be fine here. But we'll see what happens with the Chicago Bears for the rest of the season. This is still one of the toughest divisions in football. Don't sleep on the Minnesota Vikings. Don't sleep on the Green Bay Packers, and the same with the Detroit Lions. But if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, when each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for the video, guys. God bless. Peace.